Welcome everyone to the Blue Canvas and CodeScan webinar titled Move Fast and Don't Break Things. Um, we were really excited to be able to present this webinar. We do a lot of marketing at Blue Canvas around speeding up your Salesforce development process, but there's kind of a secondary piece to that, which is maintaining high quality. And at Dreamforce last year, we ran into the guys at CodeScan and saw that they had this amazing product that is kind of a perfect complement to what we do. And so today we want to kind of walk through how you can use both of these tools together to speed up your development, but also increase the quality of what you do. So my name is Jack Moxon. I'm one of the founders of Blue Canvas. In my previous life, I was a product manager at Sauce Labs, which was a Selenium-based testing company. So I've been in developer tooling for a long time. A lot of what we do is related to Git, the source control tool. So I threw my favorite Git meme on here. It says, "This is Git. It tracks collaborative work on projects through a beautiful distributed graph theory tree model." And then the other person says, "Cool, how do we use it?" And then he says, "No idea. Just memorize these shell commands and type them to sync up. If you get errors, save your work elsewhere, delete the project, and download a fresh copy," which I love because, I think Git, it really is an amazing tool and it does a lot and it's very powerful. But so many of us, I think, feel like in this cartoon where it's actually really difficult to use, particularly with Salesforce. I'm joined by Ben. Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks, Jack. It's a good meme. I don't have a good meme like that, but I have maybe more of a real world comparison of what we would do without code quality. So when people care about code quality, the velocity, the development velocity of their projects will increase. And I guess the meme here shows if you don't care about code quality, eventually over time, your development velocity, i.e. how fast you can develop new stuff, reduces and takes a nosedive eventually. So yeah, so we've developed a product called CodeScan, which is a static code analysis tool. It tries to identify code quality issues in your code.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about these dual things, the speed component, as well as kind of the safety and quality. We'll spend a really brief time on the slides, then jump right into some cool demos. We'll show Blue Canvas, and then we'll show how CodeScan gets involved. And of course, we'll have time for questions at the end. There is a question box, I believe, through the webinar, so you can start putting your questions now, and we'll start answering those towards the end. But first, we want to tell a really quick and I think fun story about continuous delivery. So this is my favorite, and it comes from outside of software. So there was this eccentric billionaire named Henry Kremer, I think, and in 1959, he announced a prize for the first team that could build a human-powered flying machine. So you can see a photo of one on the right here. So it's basically like a bicycle that can actually fly, and there was a whole challenge. So a bunch of teams from universities all over the world, like Cambridge and others, put together these elaborate teams, and they tried to solve it. And for well over a decade, no one even got close. And then in 1977, Dr. Paul McCreary's team started working on it. And within 6 months, they had won the prize. And the reason they were able to succeed where every other team had failed was they kind of turned the problem on its head. And they said, the problem isn't building a human-powered flying machine. The problem is building an airplane that can be built in half a day. And so what they did was they figured out what are the kind of cheapest, simplest materials that we can use. And this worked well because all the other teams had these elaborate planning and test and design phases that would basically take them a year. So they would spend all this time kind of designing for 6 months, then building for 6 months, and then they would run a test and it would crash. It would take that feedback and they would go again. But that's a year-long cycle to get a single test. McCready's team in 6 months were able to run several hundred, almost 1,000, I think, tests because they could try a new design, fly it, crash it, rebuild it, and try it again the same afternoon. So, iterating quickly and being able to release fast is essential to winning. I think it is a nice parallel to software development. If you can develop fast and put features out there quickly, you'll make your end users a lot happier. But of course, you don't want to move too fast, or you don't want to be able to be breaking things. So a famous quote from Facebook was one of their early mottos, which was move fast and break things. And so we, in the Salesforce world, have maybe a little bit higher degree of expectations not to have bugs out there. And so I'll turn over to Ben to talk a little bit about the don't break things side of it here.
Thanks, Jack. Well, actually, I did read that Facebook no longer uses that, but so yeah, the don't break things part, good code quality and tracking code quality and caring about code quality will certainly get your code into production more safely. So we've worked with a lot of companies around the world. One of them is a worldwide Salesforce system integrator, and when they implemented CodeScan, they saw an 83% reduction in production bugs, and so that kind of shows what you can achieve by using a tool like CodeScan. Sophos is a global security vendor. They scaled their development team by about 500%, and during that time they didn't expand their senior review team onshore, and they said that they didn't lose control of their quality, and they attribute that to CodeScan. So yeah. The Salesforce applications are often mission critical, and yeah, basically we want to reduce recruiters' crashes, right? So.
Nice. Okay, so let's dive into a quick demo of these two tools working together. So I'm logged in now here to the Blue Canvas dashboard. I've got a really simple development pipeline where I've got my developer org, I've got a UAT environment, and then I've got a couple of production branches, but we'll use this prod one in this. And at the core, Blue Canvas is a source control tool as well as a deployment CI tool. So each of these environments is actually a branch in Git, and so we allow you to connect up your Salesforce environments to a branch in Git. So this Courtney Martin environment is a branch in Git as well as a sandbox. So the first thing I can show you is how we automatically pick up changes and commit them into the repo. So I'm logged in here as Courtney Martin. I'm going to open up the developer console, and let's just come in here and say, make a quick comment with CodeScan, and I can save that. And you'll notice that I don't actually have to go and go to the command line or do something like you might do with normal Git. It gets picked up automatically. You'll also notice that there's an issue here. So we've created an integer in this method, and CodeScan is going to say, hey, that's not so good, but we'll come back to that in a second. And then I can also do the same thing with declarative change. So we'll go into here and we'll just fire up a workflow rule, for example, and we can make a quick change. So I can say edit and say CodeScan hello world. So we're just going to update the description, but if you add a field or any of these other things, Blue Canvas picks that up automatically and puts it into the Git repo. I can log in here to the repo, and I can see all the metadata that's on that repo. So all the workflows, triggers, custom objects, lightning components, classes, pretty much everything that you can imagine is on here. You can see all the different classes that I've got. For example, we're also able to grab the specific username of the person who makes a change. So you can see 4 weeks ago, it was Vladimir who made a change and created this class. And you can look on the history of this org and see, this is an import that he did previously. So with Blue Canvas, you kind of get these automatic code commits, which is great for like teams with admins as well as developers. So you may have people who are doing things like changing email templates or updating declarative stuff, and that affects your Apex code, right? So you want to make sure that everything ends up in Git. So that's the first thing. So everything is put into these branches. Now we want to deploy from our developer environment into the UAT branch. So first of all, let's just confirm that our changes are there. So you can see Courtney Martin made some changes. If I click on View Diff, I can see specifically, okay, there's the comment that we made together as well as the change to the description. So it looks good. I can click on compare. I select a target branch. In this case, we're going to say UAT. And then for source, we'll use the developer branch, Courtney Martin. I can click on compare. And this is pretty cool. So by using Git, we're able to like lightning fast do comparisons. So we're not actually pinging the Salesforce APIs here. We're actually just able to use a quick Git diff and show you all the differences between. So it looks like this book class has never been even deployed into the UAT environment. So you can see that, it's totally green here in this case. And you can actually scroll through these and see all of the diffs. So looks like we haven't deployed a UAT in a while. There's lightning components and classes that need to be added and objects and things like that. And so the first thing I'm going to do is create a new deployment request. And I can give it a nice title. So code scan webinar. And I can write a description. So it includes book object features, something like that. And you can see that we automatically generate all of the differences here in a nice, like easy to see checkbox thing. So rather than using a change set, you can actually just go in here and actually add all of the things that you want to add. So in this case, I'm going to add just the things that are related to this book class. So it's not necessary to deploy everything if you don't want to. So we can just do just the trigger, the workflow, the custom object, the layout, and the class that we worked on. We'll ignore the other stuff because it's not ready yet. I go ahead and I click create deployment request. And this is kind of like a pull request concept if you're familiar with Git. But what it does is going to do is first look for any merge conflicts. So we're going to check to make sure that no one else has made changes to that same group of files. If so, we'll actually stop the deployment and we'll show you specifically where there are merge conflicts and allow you to resolve those in our UI. And two, we'll run a Salesforce validation to make sure that all the dependencies are there. And if everything looks good, we'll do a quick deploy for you automatically. So what's nice about that is we add the deployment step to the Git merge step, and we keep those things together in a single automated step. And that's important because if you ever push to Git, you'll notice that Git is fairly forgiving. It'll just kind of take whatever code changes you make. But Salesforce is a little more stringent. It's got a lot of dependencies, and a lot of times people push into a Git repo that they can't deploy to their Salesforce orgs. And pretty soon their Git repo says one thing and their org says another, and the source of truth is no longer there. So it becomes quite difficult to see that. So this will just run for a few seconds. You can see it's going. But in the meantime, we'll talk about how CodeScan can help at this step too. So in addition to a Salesforce validation, CodeScan can also like seamlessly hook into Blue Canvas and run a static code analysis and look for code quality issues. So I'll turn it over to Ben while this runs, and then we'll come back at the end.
Thanks, Jack. That's very cool stuff. I'm gonna try and share my desktop now. You tell me if when you see it.
Looks good. Yes.
Okay, so just so you know, that's our website there. We've got a cloud section where you can sign up, trial, get going. But basically, this is our cloud offering, which is, and we've previously analyzed the code that Jack has ran. Here we can go into it. That was the book class, and as Jack pointed out, we created this integer, which is actually an unused integer, which is we should remove this code because it's completely unnecessary. You can also click on here, and you can see that this is a bit of information about the problem. So I'll jump into a little demo of some of the issues and some of the things that CodeScan gives. First of all, we've got the different kinds of issues that we collect. We've almost got 200 different types of rules, checking everything from bugs and security vulnerabilities to stylistic problems, which are classified as code smells. We do code coverage, so everything from Salesforce, the code coverage is brought in, and you can use that for various metrics and checking how your project is progressing. Code duplication. So let me jump into some of the issues that we create. I've just put a little filter here on some of the issues. Here we've got some bugs. For example, in an unconditional statement, sometimes developers will leave unconditional statements in. It's meant to be executed, but it's not being. So that could be a bug. We've got security vulnerabilities. So we've got some SOCL injection things here. We've got writing some SOCL here without escaping stuff correctly. Just putting a quote around something doesn't necessarily make it safe, and that's coming in from somewhere unknown, which a hacker or something could make some changes to the SOCL and maybe expose some data that you don't intend. And then we've got code smells, which is, as I said, sort of more, concentrating on code quality, things like complexity and lots of different kinds of things. With I'll jump into. We've got this unused one. We've got a rule here about using an up-to-date version of the API, and we've got here something about Lightning, which is that this class is Aura enabled, but it doesn't have any of the correct exception handling that you should have in a typical Aura class. You're supposed to catch it and rethrow with an Aura handled exception as appropriate. So we have this leak period over here, which can be set up as a part of your workflow. Anything that gets introduced can be set to show up here. This is useful in the scenario where you're doing continuously developing something, and you want to make sure that you don't introduce any new bugs. So these show only what's changed in a recent change, so which is a configurable thing, and then you can use that information, and in fact any kind of information in the system to drive what's called a quality gate. And a quality gate is basically saying, okay, this is the minimal quality of our project must be X, and you can use lots of different types of metrics to say what X is. In this case, we need a security rating is less than A. We'd need to fix that, and before we should deploy. So in this case, this project is in a failed state, and so you should not continue the deployment. I'll just quickly jump over to one last section here I wanted to show, which is sort of taking all of the information that we've gathered and displaying it in some different types of charts. The cool thing about these is that it's all about, I guess, helping you figure out where you want to focus your development effort. Cleaning up the technical backlog, technical debt that you have in your code base is an important part of improving. So here's something that you could say. Here's some overviews. You can say this is a really bad class. It's a really bad outlier. It's got a lot of technical debt. Big bit of code. Let's go in and focus on this code rather than just blindly going around and fixing code. And here's another one.
Ben, I think you might have cut out. And Ben mentioned that there's a storm in Australia at the moment, so he may have cut out. But
Sorry, guys.
there you go. There you are.
There's a bit of a storm over here. I must have dropped out. How far did we get, actually?
Maybe 30 seconds back, I'd say.
Okay. Well, all I was just showing was that this code coverage is great to maybe focus in on a class like this, which has very little code coverage but is very complex. So yeah, so it's just this section is a great way of focusing in on what you should focus on particular areas of development rather than on everything. So yeah, I'll pass back to you, Jack.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Ben. I mean, I think that was a great overview. There's a ton more cool features that CodeScan has. So there's only so much time to show them, but people should definitely check them out. So we're back on the Blue Canvas page now. So you can see our deployment request has validated and prepared. So that means it's passed all of our Salesforce checks. It's nice for like a release manager or developer can come in here and see, in this specific deployment request, which files are included. So we've got our classes, our object, and you can actually scroll down and see it, which is awesome for doing a code review. You can even add a nice discussion here. But one thing we saw from the CodeScan analysis was that the book class probably isn't ready. It needs to have a little bit more done. So I can come in here, actually remove it from the deployment, and this will go ahead and rerun. And of course, like I mentioned, we can actually fix that and then come back and push it later, which is nice. And of course, having this nice place for code reviews, so you can say removing book class due to integer introduction or whatever. You can add a nice comment, and so people can come and look. And so if you're like a release manager, you can come in and see all of your open deployment requests. You can see one from 2 days ago, 1 hour ago. You can actually click on it and see what's going on. So this one is one that will show you kind of what happens when there's a failure. So if it doesn't validate, you can see the log here we include, which is quite nice. So in this case, I actually, in the test, just forgot to specify another file that was necessary. But again, it's much easier to have kind of all this in one place, and release managers can go ahead and review that. So once that is finished validating, then we'll be able to go ahead and do a nice quick deploy. But in the meantime, we'll open it up for questions. So we have a few that we've gotten. One was asked if there would be a video recording of this after the fact, and the answer is of course. We'll be sending that around soon, so we'll get that out there. Another question was, is CodeScan scanning the Blue Canvas repo or a mirrored repo on GitHub or Bitbucket? You want to take that one, Ben?
Yeah, it's actually scanning Blue Canvas directly. So Blue Canvas has a password protected public GitHub. Git repository, it just very much in the way that GitHub is public. And so yeah, we're scanning that directly.
Awesome, yeah. And that's one of the benefits of being based on open tooling. So the integration took us maybe 10 minutes to do. Looks like this had another failure, but you guys get the idea. Another question was, can we feed our own coding standards into CodeScan and validate against our team standards?
Yes, so something I didn't show you. There is a lot more functionality in CodeScan. Yes, quality profiles. So we've got lots of rules in there, and you can turn them on, turn them off again. There's lots of rules that can be configured, and in certain versions you can also write your own rules if you have some very specific rules. In general, we don't find people need to do that, but there are some scenarios that people want to do that, and it does work. Yeah.
Awesome. Another one for you, Ben. Can you compare PMD and CodeScan?
Yeah, so PMD is an open source tool. It has some of the functionality of CodeScan. I think last time I looked, it had in the order of 15, 20 types of rules. CodeScan's commercially supported. We've got probably almost 10 times the number of rules as PMD.
Awesome. And a question that comes up quite a lot. So any plan to support Salesforce DX? I think probably both of us will have an answer for that. So I'll jump in. So Blue Canvas absolutely is excited to work with Salesforce DX, and we actually kind of see ourselves as kind of the GitHub to Salesforce DX's Git, in the sense that DX is a ton of different changes to APIs and CLIs and a lot of great things that are coming down the pipeline from Salesforce. However, we don't see it as something that is necessarily ideal for like admins or every different type of user. And so our goal is to make a really nice user interface so you can use DX without having to learn how to like set it up yourself. So a lot of times we'll be using DX-based APIs. We're actually make it possible to spin up scratchworks directly from the UI, just like you would with a sandbox. We actually make it possible to deploy between sandboxes and scratchworks, which is difficult to do, as you know, because there's different directory structures between them. So we're very much set up for DX and excited about it. And our goal is to make DX more accessible to you. I don't know if there's anything you want to cover on DX, Ben, on your side.
Oh, well, not really, but I mean, so it's the way CodeScan is run is it just needs to be fed some code. So however you want to give it to it, if you have it locally and you run it on that, if you have Blue Canvas pulling it into a branch for you, or I saw another question in there about integrating with Jenkins. Yes, it works very well with Jenkins. So anything that basically, as long as you can get the code there through CVS, if you're using CVS, hopefully not, or any other technique that you get your code there, such as through Salesforce DX, you run that code and CodeScan. It's a static analysis tool. It does not need to be running in any special environment. So therefore, as long as it's there, and then we can pick it up and run it. The cloud version, of course, is slightly different. We generally we integrate with Git and directly with the Salesforce cloud metadata, and that's a little bit different. But talk to us about that if you want to use it in the cloud.
Cool. Well, we've got just like another minute. I did see another question about Jenkins, and I wanted to address that from the Blue Canvas side. So our whole system is built actually on Git. And so we want to make it really easy to integrate with other developer tools like Jenkins. At the moment, there are some things you can do with Blue Canvas and Jenkins, and there's some things that are on our roadmap. So, setting up deployments with Jenkins is on the roadmap, but you can actually do a lot with our tool and Jenkins today. So if you want more detail, please reach out to team@bluecanvas.io. I think that'll be a good time for us to kind of sign off here. But if you have any questions that we didn't get to, you can reach us at team@bluecanvas.io. Ben, what's the best way to get in touch with CodeScan?
Support at code-scan.com, or just Google Salesforce Code Quality Tools, and CodeScan will be up the top there somewhere.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks everyone. As I mentioned, we will send out this video so you can share it with other people on your team. It'll take a day or two to get that out. So maybe early next week, we'll send this out. And again, reach out to us with any questions. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Jack.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.